What's going on, y'all? It's your girl, Bria Simmons, and you're listening to Certified BS. So today we are talking about one of my favorite topics in the whole wide world. It's limiting beliefs and fixed limitations. We're also going to be talking about different thought processes and what I call thought traps. Okay, so a couple episodes ago, we did some talking about belief systems in general and what they are and how they're one of the core BSs, even though our belief systems are not BS, but you get it, the double entendre, the BS. So we're talking more about limiting beliefs in general and what they are, and as well as fixed limitations, what those are, thought traps, what those are. But before we get into it, I really like this starting with a breathing exercise. It is great that our body unconsciously breathes for us through life. It really keeps us alive, but that's all it's doing. Unless you're conscious about breathing and breathwork and what it actually does, which is not BS, which it can really reduce anxiety and stress and help us with emotional regulation and help us center and ground ourselves in moments and help us get through really hard things. So we're going to practice breathwork. Maybe I'll continue it, maybe I won't, but we're doing it again today. So we're going to do box breathing. I'll give you a reminder again. Box breathing is going to be creating a box with our breath. So we're going in through our nose for 4 counts. We're holding there for 4 counts. We're releasing out through our mouth with 4 counts, and then we are pausing for 4 counts. Okay, we're going to do 2 of these. If you are driving, please do not close your eyes. Or if you're running, though, do what you do, but definitely don't close your eyes when you're driving. If you can close your eyes, do it. You don't have to, but it can be helpful. I'm going to be doing it along with you here, so let's go. Ready? I want you to breathe in through your nose for 4, 2, 3, 4. Pause for 4, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4, 2, 3, 4. Pause for 4, 2, 3. Again, in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4, 2, 3, 4. Exhale for 4, 2, 3, 4. Pause for 4, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that is a conscious practice of breathing. Again, we're so happy that our bodies unconsciously breathe for us all the way through life. That is a great feature and function of being a human, but that's all it's doing is keeping us alive unless we're getting conscious to our breath work. So that's what we're doing there. We're really practicing it as a way and an intentional tool to help us through different experiences of mental health. So go ahead and practice that at any point in time throughout your day. Again, you're already doing it, so no one really know that you're even practicing. You can do it in the middle of your workday. You can do it when your kids are stressing you out. You can do it when your partner is on your nerves. You can do it before you go to bed, when you wake up in the morning. You can really do it at any time. All right, so we are talking about the limiting beliefs. And if you remember, I think it was in episode 1 or 2, I said my favorite quote in the whole wide world, and I might have also tweaked it a little bit to make it my own, but if you think you can, you're right. And if you think you can't, you're right. Well, I said I needed to find out who quoted it, and what I found out on the internet was that it's believed to be that was Henry Ford. So thank you, Mr. Ford. Henry, you got this. Awesome. Love that, because it is so true. It has so much to do with today's episode, because what we are thinking and believing is the first hurdle to actually then do what we do or don't do. Okay. So oftentimes, more often than not, it is our thoughts and beliefs that are taking place that are influencing our behaviors and actions. It is not always the case that our behaviors and actions are taking place first. We know that our behaviors and actions will influence our thoughts and beliefs, but we have to be more conscious to the process of being intentional with our behaviors and actions to create new consequences of more positive and helpful thoughts and more positive and helpful emotions. Okay. That's what we just did with the breath work. We were intentional with an action in order to be able to get some emotional regulation and maybe some peace and calm in that moment. Okay. But Henry Ford, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. It makes so much sense, because when we have a limiting belief, it's limiting because it's often describing something that we believe we cannot do. Also, I just want to be clear here. I know I've clarified before with my language. For the purposes of today's episode, I might use thoughts and beliefs interchangeably. Now, there are going to be nuances in the psychology community of the difference between thoughts and beliefs, and there are differences. But for the sake of today's episode, I might just use them interchangeably, and I'm really talking about any of the content that flows through our minds or our heads, okay? So I might use those interchangeably, just FYI for today. So the word can't is a trigger word for likely a limiting belief. Now, I have been transparent before on podcasts and with my own journey of my personal experience when I was paralyzed for a couple of weeks. Now, this is when I really learned about limiting beliefs. And let me tell you why. Because everything that I once said I could not do was actually me saying I couldn't do a behavior, when in fact, the only time I really couldn't do those behaviors was when I physically could not walk. Let that sink in for just a moment. I realized that my limiting beliefs were limiting and were actually lying to me when I actually physically couldn't do anything. Because I was like, oh, wow, before when I was able to walk, I could have actually done all of those things. I was just saying that I couldn't. Okay, a very simple example of this is a simple example would be something like weightlifting, right? I can't lift that heavy. Okay, so this comes into the difference between fixed limitations and limiting beliefs, because a fixed limitation might be, I can't lift that heavy yet. I can't actually lift up that weight yet. So like I can't lift the 80-pound dumbbells. Sure, that would be a fixed limitation. Your body actually can't do it. But a limiting belief of I can't lift weights, or I'm not an athlete, so I can't do those things. There's nothing actually physically holding you back from going in and lifting weights and getting to lift the 80-pound dumbbells. Okay, so telling ourselves that we can't do something when we actually can is limiting a lot of the things that we're preventing ourselves from doing. So this might even be like, I can't go to the gym, right? Really? You can't go to the gym? You actually can go to the gym, but you don't have time to go to, or you say you don't have time to go to the gym, or you're too busy to go to the gym today, or you have other commitments that are preventing you from going to the gym. Sure, but I can't go to the gym is not actually true or accurate. So part of this is actually understanding what's taking place in our heads and is it accurate? Okay, we say I can't do that to so many things, and we do it for a lot of different reasons. So one of the most common I can'ts is an I can't to protect ourselves. We're kind of trying to preserve our abilities. So like, I can't do that. We probably don't want to do that because we would be new at it and it might be embarrassing and we might not like the way it feels to be novice at something or starting something from scratch. So we say I can't in order to protect ourselves from those feelings that we don't like to feel. But you can, you're choosing not to. So limiting beliefs are what we're saying we can't do when actually we can. It's fake messaging. It's fake news that we're feeding ourselves. And we have to be more accurate and precise with the things that we're telling ourselves if we actually want to start to get to levels that we've never gotten to before. Remember, this podcast, we're brainstorming better selves, right? We don't have to become our best selves here. So if you want to still stay away from the things that you have told yourself you can't do, or you just never plan on doing or want to do, that's fine. We're talking about the things that you would like to do, but that you've been telling yourself you can't do for whatever excuse it is that you've given yourself. So something that can be, even for me, I could have said prior to starting the podcast or restarting and then restarting again the podcast, I can't be a podcaster. That's funny. Why? I had to ask myself why, and I have some really important people in my life who were asking questions like that, but why? Brianna, why? Why can't you be a podcaster? There's actually nothing that's holding you back. Nothing. Truly nothing. It was a protection mechanism for me to feel more comfortable about not doing a thing that helped me cope with not doing it, because had I been doing it, it would probably be uncomfortable to start. We've talked about that. It would probably take a lot of effort and efforting is a part of this life, but it's not comfortable. We've talked about the zone of comfort and discomfort. Efforting is not always comfortable. So when we say I can't, it's oftentimes I'm protecting myself from, or I'm scared if I do. Okay, those are the limiting beliefs. The fixed limitations are the actual things in your way. Okay, or the actual physiological experiences that are preventing you. When I could not walk, when I physically was impaired and could not walk, there was no way I was going to be able to do something that required walking. It was a fixed limitation. It was out of my control. And those things do exist too. But I really encourage you to start to check in with any of your I can'ts, any of your limiting beliefs, and say, is this actually something I can't do? Or is this something I'm telling myself I can't do to protect myself, right? Is there actually something standing in my way? Or is there actually nothing at all standing in my way, but I am choosing to say I can't because it's going to feel more comfortable for me. It's going to be more protective for me. It's going to make me feel like it's okay for me to not be engaging in this thing, even though deep down I know I would like to do that or be that. Okay. So this is going to bleed into another space that we're going to talk about here today, which are thought traps. Now, they're not the same as the limiting beliefs and the fixed limitations. I just wanted to give that introduction, and I will likely many times talk about those in different capacities and how they're preventing us in so many different ways and how they interplay with our lives. But I also want to bring us in to what are called thought traps. Now, thought traps are similar to limiting beliefs in the way that they are shortcuts in our head that we've developed in order to adapt to the life that we're living right now. But these shortcuts in our head, or these ways to rationalize from point A to point B, are often incorrect and often not helpful. But we've built them as ways of moving through the world. And in some way, we have thought that they were helpful. But thought traps, when I bring this into my little ones, when I have clients who are young, who are children, I will say thought traps are like uncooked spaghetti, okay? They're really fragile, they're really stiff, and they break really easily, okay? It's really easily to get trapped in one of these. We want cooked spaghetti. We want something more fluid and flexible. Now, if I bring it to my adult version, I say a thought trap is like walking a tightrope. It's really difficult to stay on a tightrope. If anyone has ever tried, or even tried to walk on a balance beam for that matter, or even in a straight line, just one foot after the other, it is really challenging. One false move, or you sneeze, or you bend and you are pushed off balance and you fall off, okay? That's what a thought trap is, and it's really rigid. We want to make our thoughts not traps. We want them to be more flexible. So I say, rather than walking on a tightrope or a balance beam, we want to be walking on like a sidewalk or a walking pad or a treadmill, or even if we can broaden it even a little bit more to walking down like a roadway or a pathway. We want to give ourselves room and flexibility. But our heads and our minds don't always do that. We don't always give ourselves the flexibility to be able to think in a new way, simply because we develop patterns in our head, and at some point we believe they serve us and they stick. Okay. We're going to talk about some of these tightropes, some of these rigid thought traps, some of these spaces that we're actually going to try to get out of and help to become more flexible. So the first is what we call dichotomous thinking, which is going to be the psych term, which we don't need to know. You can remember all or nothing thinking, or black and white thinking. And just by the name, you can probably interpret what that means. It means that you think that you believe everything happens in a two-form way, this or that, A or B, here or there, all or nothing, yes or no. When in fact, again, you can see how that's really rigid because it only gives you two options, right? Good or bad. Back to those judgments there. And that's really rigid, that things can only happen in those two ways. In fact, the way that we become more flexible with all or nothing thinking is to recognize that there is middle ground, that there is gray area, that there can be more than one response. And in fact, that A and B can also be true. So black and white thinking, all or nothing thinking, dichotomous thinking is one thought trap that can take place for us that can get us stuck because we're not thinking about what else could possibly happen. Okay. Another one. This one is so common for so many people, especially if you are someone who manages anxiety in your life. Now, anxiety, we'll have a whole conversation on it. It's not for today, but we all have levels of anxiety, and anxiety can take place in really functional and healthy ways, or it can take place in dysfunctional and unhealthy ways. So this next thought trap takes place often with anxiety, but it can take place anytime. It's called catastrophizing. And catastrophizing is worst case scenario thinking. And worst case scenario thinking is always thinking the bad thing is going to happen, or the worst possible outcome is going to happen, or not even always thinking it, but always imagining it and getting yourself into a situation and then believing that the worst possible situation is going to come true, or it could come true, or fearing that it's going to come true, or even trying to prepare with it. And this one is really interesting because what we know to be true, psychologically speaking, in the literature, in the research, we know that if you can imagine the worst case scenario and you're trying to do this as a protection mechanism, it actually has no emotional indication on protecting you if the worst case scenario were to actually happen. So if you were to imagine that you had a public speaking engagement, you were going to get up there and forget all of your lines. Like that could probably be the worst case scenario, right? This is like what you're imagining. So one, you're not setting yourself up for success anyway by, rehearsing in your thoughts that you're going to fail rather than succeed. But let's just say like you're imagining worst case scenario and that's what you believe is going to happen when you get on that stage. And then you get on that stage and that thing actually happens. You forget all of your lines. The way that you prepared for it in your head beforehand actually has no help on it happening in the moment. It did not make you feel any better. So catastrophizing or worst case scenario thinking is a thought trap. It makes us believe that we are doing something to prepare for the worst when in fact, it's not actually helping us prepare for the worst. Now, catastrophizing can be hard to get out of, and we don't actually have to necessarily imagine that the best case scenario could happen, though that is a way that some people get out of catastrophizing. They say, okay, what if also the best case scenario could happen? Which is helpful, right? If we're going to be imagining the worst, it's also helpful for us to imagine the best. But what's even better is to start imagining the realistic scenarios. We don't want to catastrophize. We want to rationalize. We want to think about what could actually happen. Okay, so catastrophizing is another thought trap, really rigid, more flexible. Walking on that sidewalk is more like thinking about a more realistic case scenario that maybe we forget a couple lines. That's could probably happen. And, those things do happen. But worst case scenario is not helpful. It's really rigid. Okay, emotional reasoning. So this one is something that can take place for us more often than we think, but it's believing our feelings are facts. So I feel terrible and this is the worst day ever, right? We are believing that the feeling that we're feeling is impacting the whole situation. Okay. We can emotionally reason a lot. We can really read into the feeling or the experience that we're having and then then imagine that it is a factual experience. So I feel tired and I'm going to have a horrible day, right? It's really kind of pulling out of what is what's coming out of our emotional space. And now emotional reasoning is not really helpful because an emotion is emotion. A feeling is not a fact. A feeling is a feeling. A feeling is an indicator. And you can feel terrible in a moment and still have the possibility of having a good day. Okay. Another thought trap, the fallacy of change. This is believing that things have to change around you in order for you to have the emotional experience that you want to have. This is believing that externally things need to change in order for you to change. Now, this is, as we said, many of these can be, this is a protection mechanism, right? Like if we don't have to do the changing, if it was just everyone else, right? If they would all change and they would all just, make things better around me, then my life would be better, right? My boss needs to change, my job needs to change, my partner needs to change, my family needs to change. If only they would all change, I would be happy. Like this would be simple. But the fallacy of change is that we don't have control of anyone or anything other than ourselves. So this is a thought trap because believing that for others to change or the situation or circumstance to change in order for you to be happy, is just not true. And in fact, you can generate and create your own happiness. It's hard, but you can do it. So the fallacy of change is a thought trap. We have mental filtering and disqualifying the positive. This is just always only seeing the negative things that are happening. One that I love because this is a protection mechanism and it's natural for humans as well. We wake up in the morning and if we are feeling fine, AKA not feeling sick, we just immediately go into day mode, movement mode. What do I have to do? But if we wake up in the morning and feel sick, it's the first thing that we think of. Oh my God, I'm sick. What's gonna happen? Why is this happening? I have a sore throat. I have to call out X, Y, and Z. We don't wake up in the morning feeling good and be like, oh, I'm so glad I'm feeling healthy today. And I'm thankful for my lungs. And I'm thankful for not getting a virus. And I'm thankful for all these things. So we don't naturally move towards gratitude or the things that we're thankful for, or the things that are positive or good. And we really naturally gravitate to the things that are bad or going wrong. So this is, again, natural. It's protection. We had to once survive, like actually survive in the wild. And so, it's natural for us to look towards things that are going to hurt us or be negative. But this one takes some time. It can also be like if you go into a presentation and you get feedback and your boss gives you 3 pieces of really positive feedback and 1 piece of negative, and you only start to focus on the negative, or you say like, oh yeah, that's what I was supposed to do, but this is the thing that I have to change. Okay. Not very helpful. Fortune telling, jumping to conclusions, and mind reading. These are all colloquial. We know these in everyday language. They're not helpful. You can't tell the future. You can't read people's minds. You can't conclude things based on singular facts or figures. Now, we can make interpretations. We can make educated guesses. We know some people better than we know others. And these are all still guesses. These are not facts. Okay. Those are more. Overgeneralizing, we know what this is. This is taking like one thing that's happened to us and applying it to everything. Okay. This is another thought trap, rigid thinking. It does not actually allow us to move through the world in a way where it allows us to change, and we can change. We're able to change. Okay. I am flying through these. We've talked about labeling before. Labeling everything is making judgments and putting judgments on everything. This is not helpful. This does not actually move us forward. So labeling is a thought trap. We want to speak in facts, not labels or things that we're perceiving. The last one that I'm going to talk about, and then we are going to close it out for today, are called should statements or absolute statements. So these are one of the trickiest because it's a rule that we've created for ourselves that we believe to be true. I should be there. I should be doing this. They should be here. I have to be doing this thing. I must do this. All of these things where my favorite little saying to go with this is that you're shoulding all over the place. Okay. You should do this. You should do that. This should be this way and it should be that way. These are all rules that you've created that no one else has created. It's not a rule of life. It's just a rule of you. And it's not helpful. All right. You're putting absolute labels on things that can be flexible. The way to make it flexible is changing your shoulds or have tos or musts to I would like to, I would prefer if, it would be more comfortable if, I would would feel better if, right? Those are more reasonable, more rational, and they're more factual. You don't should or have to anything, but it would probably feel better if you did that thing. You would probably like it if you were further along in your career, but you shouldn't be anywhere. You should be exactly where you have brought yourself to be, right? But you would like it if you could get to a further place. Okay, so I hope these make sense. I am happy to go into more detail. I would like for anyone, if you have any questions on limiting beliefs, fixed limitations, thought traps, anything of the sort, send them my way. You can reach out at connect@briasimmons.com. You can also reach out to any of my social platforms, the Bria Simmons. You can reach out to any of the podcast streaming platforms with questions, as well as on YouTube. I hope you're all watching this on YouTube or listening, however you're consuming this content. I appreciate the support. I hope you can all like, follow, share, comment, show it to a friend, ask questions, interact. That's what really makes this podcast continue. We are going to pause here. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know if you want to hear more. And until next time, let this be the moment. I'm Bria Simmons, and this is Certified BS. Thanks for listening.